Senate Bill SCR1020, short title, English Language Education Requirements. Folks, this bill is one of the bills that could conceivably be one of the worst bills to go through the legislature this session. But you wouldn't know it by the way people have been voting because it has been very popular. This bill is a Senate bill, which is a companion bill to House Bill SCR 2005. They are exactly the same bill. One is running in the House, one is running in the Senate. Now, we have discussed this issue at length when the vote came up for HCR 2005, that is the House version of it. So we're not going to get into that. All you need to do in order to find out that information is to go to my YouTube channel, and you can access that very easily. Go to YouTube and then search for my name down here, Jose Borajero, and then when you get to my channel, all you have to do is enter the bill number, and then you can watch the video on it. So we're not going to be covering most of what we covered before because it's the same. Why do it twice? But some things have happened since then, and I want to bring your attention to a couple of them. Number one is that since we did that video, there has been a vote in the House, the full House of Representatives, and that bill, when I said it's very popular, it passed the House 59-1. Actually, it was 51-1, and there was one abstention, I believe. There was only one vote in the whole House of Representatives that voted against this bill. Now, that vote came from, get this, that vote came from an individual, a representative whose name I cannot pronounce, but I'll try my best. I think it's Nguyen or Nguyen. He is a Vietnamese individual. And it so happens that this Vietnamese individual and his wife were English learners. They're immigrants from Vietnam, and they learned to speak English using the full immersion system. And that is exactly what this bill is intended to replace and get rid of. It is intending to replace this, the provisions of Proposition 203 that the voters passed back in 2000, year 2000 it was, that demanded that English learners we have some hours of immersion in English. The Senate version, the one that we're talking about today, also cleared the Senate, but this time it cleared it, let's see, it was 24-6. So in this case, we didn't have just one senator that voted against it, we had 6 senators that voted against it. So we're making some progress, I suppose. Yeah. But still, it is a very bad bill if you want English learners to learn English. Now today, we are very fortunate because we have with us, in addition to looking at Archie and me, we are fortunate to have with us somebody who actually knows something about education. It is Diane Douglas, and she was, for 4 years, she was a superintendent of public instruction. So she probably knows about education more than 10 times Archie and mine combined, you know. So with any more to say about it, we'll let her take over, and because she has a few things to say about this bill and what the consequences are and how we got to this point, etc.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Archie, for having me here today. I am a little surprised by this bill, to say the least, especially surprised that it's being run by the Republicans. While I was in office, there was a big push for from different quarters to repeal English language immersion, and I absolutely would not. We had an office in the Department of Education, ELLs, the English Language Acquisition Services Office, and that was to help schools and help them provide the immersion services that people need. Jose, you yourself, you're an excellent example of how English immersion works. I have
only if you like my English.
I like your English just fine, sir. I have another friend, colleague, who was actually spent some time growing up in South America And in that case, it was Spanish immersion, and he talks about how crucial that was to his education. And we know how vital that is for these students to be successful in our country, in our system. And I worry that they're going to be relegated to second-class citizenship if we don't appropriately and properly and as quickly as possible teach them English. Now, the immersion that we started, and I wonder if our legislators are aware that this fight goes back to a lawsuit that was filed in 1992, the Flores lawsuit, over the fact that Latino children were not being taught English in Nogales, Arizona. And that lawsuit went on for, I think it was ultimately 23 years before it was resolved. While that lawsuit was grinding its way through, our legislature, well, our citizens passed Prop 203 for English only language in schools. And then our legislature had a big fight because it was about the funding. Were we funding enough to teach children how to speak English in our schools? That was the battle. And ultimately, the legislature resolved it, and with English language immersion. And this bill could undo all of that whole legal battle. And number one, what's going to do with our children? But then is Arizona going to end up back in another lawsuit because it's not appropriately teaching children how to speak English?
I wonder what the motivation is for, now, look, if you buy into the mantra that Republicans don't care about Hispanics, and that they don't care about them learning English or whatever, but the Democrats do, then I could understand it. But every single Democrat,
Supported it.
yeah. So
it.
it's amazing to me that people who should know better. I mean, if you have, look, I don't have any children in school, but if I have children in school and they were speaking Spanish at home, I would be tickled pink that they're going to spend 4 hours in English immersion so that they learn English, so they don't have to wash dishes the rest of their lives.
Well, and that's what I found out with my staff in, I mentioned OLS, the Office of English Language Acquisition Services. We had people that were boots on the ground in the schools, and they said what they found were the parents coming to them and begging that their children be taught English as efficiently and as effectively as humanly possible. Now, we had the 4-hour immersion model, and then I don't remember whether it was 2017 or 2018, while I was still on the Board of Ed, the State Board of Ed reduced it to a 2-hour model. But the way they reduced it was through testing for proficiency. So you're in a 4-hour model, but as you become stronger in English, we're going to cut back on the immersion time and get you more mainstreamed, if you will. Well, then the year after that, and I think that might have been 2019, I think it was after I was out of office, it might have been 2020, a bill is run that says we're going to cut it down to 2 hours, whether you're proficient or not.
And as I recall, that bill passed.
And that bill passed, and so now we have a 2-hour model, but now the next step is they want to take it out completely.
And you know what? I still remember that last year there was a similar bill to take it out completely. And that bill eventually failed. But this year, and it failed because, well, I'm not going to get into why it failed, but it was 1 or 2 people actually managed to kill it, which is a good thing. But this year, we don't have that protection, and it's sailing right through. And for the life of me, I cannot understand why the Republicans are voting for this.
Well, and one of the things that surprised me when I was in office, when I was superintendent, I had created some advisory boards to help, with decision-making and processes and whatnot. I had an Asian American board, or call it an Asian board, Asian American, Latino, American advisory board, whatever. And, I would never mention any names of the people who were on it, but they were, I would call them pretty high-level, pretty elite Latinos within our community and state, And I ultimately ended up disbanding the committee because all they ever wanted to talk about was bringing bilingual education back. And I said, it's not the law of the land, it's not a method that is supporting. The Office of Civil Rights from the federal government came to us while I was in office, and they actually increased the cut rate for proficiency, which ultimately ended up making English language immersion look less successful than it really is in our schools. My concern is not the right word. My thought is, if there's a failure, and I have heard from indirectly heard from one of the legislators who's running, Representative Fillmore, who's running the bill that's on the House side, he has told people that it's because our Spanish-speaking students are not learning core academic content in this type of program. Well, with all due respect to Representative Fillmore, what I would say is you're criticizing a system that can't teach English language arts proficiency to English language speaking students. So if there's a failure of immersion, in my opinion, it is the failure of how the districts are implementing the program. It's not a failure of English immersion as a concept.
Yeah. So now,
Speaking of implementing, I have a question for you. There are 2 bills pending, which is going to require that students be taught by remote learning in various percentages. How are you going to have the immersion program operative if the students are doing remote learning?
In my opinion, it's not going to be successful. It's going to be no more successful than our schools and our districts that have tried to teach our kindergartners and first graders to read remotely. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Work. No,
It's not
it
gonna
just
be
won't. It
successful.
won't.
And then we're going to end up, in my opinion, once again, probably in a lawsuit over this. And the other thing we have to take a look at is what they're pushing, it seems, in some cases, is not necessarily bilingual education, but rather dual language enrollment programs, which are a bit different. But then are our school districts, and this is a hypothetical question, are our school districts then going to use what is English language learner funding to run these dual language programs for English speaking students in addition to your English learners, your English language learners? And then I would see another lawsuit coming because we're basically misappropriating the funding that's intended to help children learn to speak English.
well, the only thing I can say about that, and we've talked about this at length before. As I said, we have another video on it. We have been talking to legislators. We have been saying everything we can to oppose this disaster. Actually, it's only a disaster if you really want these kids to learn English properly. One thing that I know for a fact is that you cannot be proficient in a language unless you learn to think in that language. Mm-hmm. If you have to translate back and forth, you're never going to be proficient in that language, no matter who you are.
Well, and one of the other issues with the English immersion program that doesn't seem to be properly applied is it's supposed to be a short-term program. You know, get the kids in within a year, 2 absolute tops, and that should be the long end of it. It is an immersion program to get these kids speaking English and understanding and thinking in English as quickly as humanly possible. And that's how they will be successful in America.
And then they can join the mainstream and graduate from the school just like the rest of the kids do and apply for jobs, et cetera, et cetera. So, anyway.
If I have a minute, I'd like to point out something to Mr. Shope that maybe he needs to go back and read his bill and make a further amendment to his bill, because this bill basically repeals Title 15, Section 751, 52, 53, 54, and 55. But if you go to the bill as Mr. Shope has left it and you look at what is Section A2B, he continues to say that the State Board of Education shall adopt alternative English instruction models pursuant to sections 15.753, which he has repealed. So, I mean, you can't, they can't be directed to go to a section that doesn't exist. So he needs to amend this even further, and maybe it'd be a good idea if he just totally withdraws it. That'd be a better thing,
That would
Mr.
be the
Shope.
best idea for the
That would be
children.
my suggestion to you.
That is only